Namaskar. Welcome to Conversations with Rakesh. Here's today's question. Sir, I work in a reputed company. Every year there is a performance cycle where I'm supposed to fill a brag sheet about my accomplishments. I don't like doing this. So I spend some time, write something in it and submit it. And I know that I don't get recognized for the work I do. But there is someone else in my team who doesn't work as hard as I do, but his brag sheet is much better than mine. The boss thinks he works harder, and I know that he gets more rewarded than what I do. This is very unfair, and I don't like it. How do I deal with this situation? This reminds me of this famous story about the tortoise and the hare. And we all know this story, right? There is this tortoise who's very slow, hardworking, and the hare who's very fast. And in the race, the hare sleeps and the tortoise, slow and steady, keeps working and wins the race. And that's what we are taught when we are young. But when we look at the real world in the corporate and reality of life, the world is far from these utopian systems. There, there is a very different story. In fact, when I went to the corporate world, my boss taught me a lesson that Rakesh, a squeaky wheel gets the oil, which means that if you don't talk about what you do and if you're quiet, nobody's going to notice that you even survive or even are there. So to be noticed, you have to make some noise. And that means you have to talk about yourself. And this is where many of us are very uncomfortable communicating about our accomplishments. It comes from our educational backgrounds, culture. We are taught that our work should speak for itself. But in reality, that's not true. Our work, I mean, everybody is doing work. Everybody's work should speak for itself, and it doesn't happen that way. And this is where I feel that you have to balance this world according to the principles that you have been brought upon and what is the reality. There is the lovely movie which is based on the tortoise and the hare that you may want to think through. This is a Hindi movie called Katha. It had Farooq Sheikh, Deepti Nawal, Nasiruddin Shah, Alik Padamsi, and amazing actors. And the story was about this simple person called Nasiruddin Shah, who's a very simple guy called Raja Ramji. And he helps everyone. He lives in this place. He has a clerical job in a company. And Deepti Nawal is also living in that same place. And he has a crush on her. But he doesn't open up. He doesn't talk about his accomplishments. He's just Mr. Nice Guy. And then comes Farooq Sheikh, a very slick, charismatic talker with zero skills but gift of gab. So he lives with Nasruddin Shah because they are friends, and then takes up a job in Nasruddin Shah's company, becomes Nasruddin Shah's boss, dates the boss's wife and the daughter, and is a fascinating movie just because he's a little bit smarter. He's the hare who runs fast. And Rajaram Nasiruddin Shah is the tortoise who's slow and steady. But I think somewhere in the movie, Deepti Nawal tells Nasiruddin Shah that, hey, you don't have to be nice all the time. You have to speak up. You have to make your presence felt. And just by being Mr. Nice, don't assume that results will come. I think this is something you have to balance. That over communicating and sucking up to the boss is also bad, but under communicating and expecting the boss to notice what you do is also a bad expectation. So you have to balance the two. And this is where I encourage all of you to document your accomplishments on a monthly basis. Every month, sit down and ask yourself a question that I've been working hard for the last 1 month. Let me measure the output by two words, and those two words are so what. In fact, I have a very brutal Hindi dialogue that let's say somebody says that I responded to 3,000 mails in the last 1 month. The question should be so what? मैं उन 3,000 emails का अचार डालूंगा क्या? So that's the level of impact you should do. So you've been working 20 hours a day, मैं उसका अचार डालूंगा क्या? So try and translate that 20 hours a day to something meaningful. What was the impact? What was the result? That because of my 20 hours a day work, I solved 5 problems and saved so much money. I gave so much of return. I helped so many customers. Make it as business oriented and as impactful as possible. And if your work has no impact, question yourself that why are you even doing it? Now let's come back to your problem. How do you become comfortable in communicating about yourself? The first step is, I think this is where you have to lift your self-esteem and self-confidence that you should feel worthy of getting appreciated. If you're a person who doesn't think like that, look inwards. Maybe there's a reason you don't want to be appreciated. Maybe something has happened in your childhood where appreciation probably took you on a different plane and then you became arrogant. These things are very common in our Indian culture where our mothers would say कि ज़्यादा चने के झाड़ पे मत चढ़ो. Don't let success go on your head. Happens. But that doesn't mean that you stop communicating about the work you do. So these are two different principles. One, we should be humble about ourselves. Point noted. But we should also tell the world we are doing. That is also important. And this is where we sacrifice this communication about ourselves to the humility concept. To me, that is wrong. Be humble, but please do tell the world what you're doing. It's very important to project yourself. This is known as executive presence. This is known as creating your own brand. There are a lot of consultants out there who talk about it. I feel that it is about a very personal choice that you do. There are many people who have decided not to do it, and they have a different world. But if you are working in a very capitalistic corporate environment where there's a performance management system, and that system will look at who does the work better than others, then you have to communicate more. This is like a job interview. A job interview is like who is going to be a better candidate. And if you're going to be like, here's my resume, read it, and I think I deserve it, doesn't happen. You have to project, present, pitch, and convince that I'm better than others. And this is where I must tell you that in Three Idiots, there was this scene where Viru Sahasrabuddhi comes and gives a speech that, this college takes only 200 people, and he kind of throws one egg and he throws a pile of resumes and tells everyone that you are here because you trampled others and came up. I personally am not a very big fan of that dialogue. But if you look at what he's trying to say, I think he's trying to say that there is a finite space in the nest. And if you want a space in the nest, you've got to do what you have got to do. Now, that's an extreme. So, my request to you is that if you are a person who wants to stay very humble, doesn't feel like communicating about yourself, which is an extreme end, at least try and come to a middle ground. I'm not saying go to a far extreme where you keep talking about yourself. That I think is narcissism. But somewhere in the middle, that every month document what you have done, talk to your boss about it, tell them that is this the right direction we are both heading so that there are no surprises at the end of your performance cycle. I think then you'll be able to have some sense about bragging about yourself, but not feeling uncomfortable that you're bragging about yourself. Stay safe.